Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Many people have made the comparison of Nick Sandmann to Kyle Rittenhouse in terms of being tried and convicted and defamed in the media by media organizations and politicians and celebrities alike.
Oh, yeah, they convicted him in the court of public opinion. They've never been on his side.
Now Nick Sandmann is making that comparison.
Oh.
He's written a commentary at the Daily Mail in which he writes, not only does Kyle have to deal with the taking of lives, but it's compounded with the overwhelming stress and trauma of the character assassination taking place against him. From my own experience, the death threats, feeling of no future ahead, and that millions of people hate you is enough to alter you in many concrete ways and permanently. Make no mistake, even the strongest of people cannot resist the mental impact when the media war machine targets you. With Kyle's name dragged through the mud and the clear effect it's having on him, many have started to ask the question whether Kyle should sue for defamation. While I'm by no means an attorney, I've gained some experience on the ins and outs of defamation, can offer an educated guess on what the outcome would be if Kyle were to sue. And he goes on, he goes on to give you sort of the basics of a defamation case, and he also makes the point people probably don't know, he's still involved in a half a dozen lawsuits against media organizations, still to this day, 3 years later.
Right.
He goes on to write, if Kyle is prepared to take on another burden in his early life with the acceptance that it might result in nothing, I answer, give it a shot and hold the media accountable. One of the saddening parts of this media onslaught is that it has taken young people like Kyle and myself to expose how corrupt the media really is. From my own experience, I know this cannot be easy for Kyle. While I have waited to comment on the facts of Kyle's case until the trial ends, I cannot hold back on the media's public execution of him before the trial has concluded. For more on the topic, with the case now in the hands of the jury, pleased to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, retired, president of the Herb London Center for Policy Research and author of Operation Dark Heart, Spycraft and Special Ops on the Front Lines of Afghanistan and the Path to Victory. Colonel Shaffer, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. It's good to join you.
What do you think about what Sandmann had to say about Rittenhouse in the media specifically at this point?
So, look, I've had my tiff with the media from time to time, and it's amazing how they will take what is clearly not true, something that they presume or want to be true, and use it against you constantly. So I feel terrible for Kyle. And the editorial points out the viciousness that these people, the level of viciousness that they go to try to damage you. And it does, speaking as someone is a whistleblower, had to go through this gauntlet of hate, it's very unnerving. And, as Sandmann said, you then have compounded on that the deaths that he legitimately, in my judgment, he legitimately defended himself and caused. And speaking to someone who, again, has been kind of in his shoes, you don't like having to engage in shooting people, but there comes a point you have to do it. So in this case, I think the media is not only unfair. I think you've seen almost a desire to bring Kyle some sort of I don't even know how to describe it other than just wanting to hurt him. And that's reflected over and over in what you see in the mainstream media when they talk about this case and Kyle.
But don't you think the bigger issue, too, is the attack on the Second Amendment rights? To defend yourself? Because a lot of people, this is another example why we should change the Second Amendment or amend the Second Amendment, excuse me.
Yeah, no, look, Amy, I agree. When Binger said that the moment you bring a gun to defend yourself, you lose the right to defend yourself. I'm paraphrasing here, but yeah, that's how insane this prosecution has been. We at the London Center have been working this issue. We actually work with, we did a joint video with Sig Sauer for first-time gun ownership. We are all for safe gun ownership, safe use. With that said, use is the key. We believe you should be using the weapons that are available to you to defend yourself. And the moment the prosecution turned and made this about the basic fundamental right of an individual to carry a weapon and defend themselves, I think they crossed the line. And this has become not only about Kyle and his circumstance, but about the larger idea is if you or I go into a situation of chaos, do we have the right to defend ourselves? Do we have the right to have a weapon that is available to counter a likely force engagement? Or in the case of Kyle, where he's attacked by multiple people, some were unarmed, but the fact is, even in the unarmed circumstance, the individual was going for his weapon, thereby giving him that right to use his weapon to defend himself. These are all things which, to me, are academic. It shows clearly that he defended himself. But again, because of the narrative the left created right after the event, they are more focused on defending the narrative and undermining our constitutional rights than doing the right thing and admitting that Kyle was legally able to carry the weapon and defend himself legally.
And, the other thing that's at play here, too, that can be precedent setting or maybe, down a dangerous path, the next step down that dangerous path, is this idea that, well, you may have some jurors say, well, we got to convict him on something so they don't burn down Kenosha. We see the same thing going on in New York City, where you had that Black Lives Matter activist, Hank Newsom, essentially threaten the incoming mayor of New York to say, if you don't continue on with de Blasio's defund the police efforts, then there will be bloodshed. And if you don't have people standing up to people that are making threats of violence if they don't get their way, regardless of the rule of law, process, or substance, then you will descend into sort of a Hobbesian state of nature.
I think it's true, Dan, that at the macro level and micro level, if you give in to threats of violence, you see large countries invading others if they show weakness. The same thing is at the micro, where if you have community leaders, and I'm being polite here, in New York, who are threatening the city and police with violence simply because they believe they should not be held accountable, then then you will get more violence and you will get more acts of criminal behavior. That's what we've seen. So I think it's important the moment someone is threatened that you have people stand up. Kyle stood up. Kyle, I believe, showed great civic understanding and civic courage to try to defend the property and people of Kenosha. I think that was the right thing to do. And even now, when you're faced with it again, I think standing up to it is the only solution. If you give in, you will see more of the violence and you'll see more criminal behavior in any case. And I live right now in a place where law and order is recognized, appreciated. The community is multiracial. Everybody gets along very well. But the key is that everybody does understand that they are expected to live within the rule of law, no matter what that is.
Where is that community? People from Illinois looking for communities.
Yeah,
like
I actually live in North Carolina, in rural North Carolina.
There you go.
It's almost it's an amazing place by the fact that everybody works together to get along. That's community. And the moment you have these radical groups seeking to upend the order that people appreciate, law and order, you get the chaos, and therefore you have to push back against the chaos very hard.
Well, our radical group is our Cook County State's Attorney, and I just wanted to tell you this story. We had a kid, a 17-year-old stabbed an 18-year-old. The 17-year-old who stabbed him, the 18-year-old had his fist, didn't have a knife. There's video of it, and our Cook County State's Attorney said, "Oh no, they were mutual combatants, so I'm not charging him." And there's video of him stabbing him, and the guy was unarmed. So she's since changed her ways, but it took her 3 weeks to do it.
See, Amy, that's the thing. You cannot permit the official. I would say you put these radicals inside a government. You've got a double jeopardy then, because you have activists on the outside, activists on the inside, undermining rule of law for all, and it's a very dangerous situation.
Going from the micro to the macro, since you mentioned it about weakness being provocative, the Biden administration's weakness certainly seems to be provoking. We see the reports of Iran redoubling its nuclear program. And also in Russia, Vlad Putin is on quite a run. He's got troops along Ukraine's borders. He's got his stooge in Belarus launching a refugee attack on NATO's eastern flank through Poland. And now on Monday, Russia destroyed a defunct Soviet satellite with an anti-satellite missile, which, though apparently the United States was noticed on that, condemned it nonetheless, because if Jeff Bezos wants to move everybody off of Earth into some distant part of the Milky Way, then Russia's provocative actions in outer space could put a damper on that.
Yeah, I think we are, because of multiple administrations not paying attention, we are behind in space. And I did agree with President Trump's creation of Space Command. Some of our board members actually participated in President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative and actually proposed that we get into space more quickly. We didn't do as well as we should. And now the Russians and China are both working to create dominance. And this is one of those things, I'm not for the militarization of space. I'm just for the fact that we have to have military capacity to defend our massive amounts of satellites and other things we got in orbit. Yeah, this is what the left continues to fail to understand. It's like, even if you don't want us to militarize, others will and are. And to that point, Putin, by the way, Putin's also considering, according to the intelligence reports I've been reading, is considering grabbing more land, actually going more aggressively into Ukraine because, surprise, he sees the chaos in Afghanistan, he sees the chaos domestically. He believes that Joe Biden will not actually have the capacity to formulate an adequate response to his aggression. I think he's probably right, unfortunately. And China is doing the same thing. China makes open threats with no pushback. So if you see, this as a problem, that we are not in a position to actually defend our equities and what we want to do in space, you're probably correct, because at this point, from what I'm hearing, and by the way, I know Lloyd Austin, General Austin, when the Secretary of Defense, I worked for him when he was a brigadier general. The Lloyd Austin I worked for then in Afghanistan is not the Lloyd Austin who's the Secretary of Defense now. And Mark Milley is I don't know how to describe Mark, and I know Mark. Both of them have, I think, given up on trying to do the right thing to defend the country, and it shows. And I think our enemies see it.
Well, that's a pretty big statement to say about the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They've given up on trying to protect the nation. That's exactly. That's a bit of a problem, it would seem.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, with Afghanistan, how many Americans are left? I mean, we had that sloppy, deadly exit out that we blame Biden for, but no one's talking about who's left there. Does anybody care?
Yeah, we do. So I can't go into a lot of details, Amy, because we are actually, as London Center, working to help facilitate. I was actually on a call with one of the task forces attempting to do this. We think that most Americans are now out. We're probably at a level of probably at about 100 or so. There's been a number of things, Pineapple, and I'm helping directly another task force. And these are all special operations guys who were served there. And those who have, like me, we all served there. We're trying to make sure that we can adequately fund and support this effort. We believe at this point, mostly those who are left are the green card holders and those who supported us who would be otherwise targeted and assassinated by the Taliban. So, and we're talking about probably about 3,000 to 5,000 of those. So I think most Americans are out. I can't verify that, but I think there's just a handful left. But obviously, we want to try to pull out those who actually supported us. What's ironic here is the Biden administration keeps talking about all the people they saved, and they have this canard of an effort. They keep putting up this effort saying they're doing it. I don't know of anybody in the administration actually doing anything. They've been more of a hindrance than anything else. But I think...
have you heard anything, reports about Americans, green card holders, legal permanent residents, or our allies, our Afghan allies, anybody being persecuted or killed at the hands of the Taliban?
So the answer is yes, and there's been some credible reports coming out. I don't have them right in front of me this minute, but there's been a number of instances where people are found, they're taken out, and bad things happen to them.
Including American citizens?
Media is not. The American citizens, no. This is the interesting thing. The Taliban has been very careful to not attack a quote-unquote U.S. citizen by the fact that they've been able to manipulate the media to basically make the media dance to its own tune. They're a bit more sophisticated than the Taliban of 2001. And they do understand how to use the media better than ever. So they've been very careful to kind of only target Afghan citizens, Afghan nationals, especially those who served in the Afghan National Army and Afghan police. Those have been the two big targets. And I think they're going to continue to only focus on that as long as they believe they can get good media out of the West, which so far they are doing.
He is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, retired. He's the president of the Herb London Center for Policy Research. He's the author of Operation Dark Heart, Spycraft and Special Ops on the Front Lines of Afghanistan and the Path to Victory. Colonel Shaffer, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy and Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I've been telling you about Relief Factor for a long time. You know why? Because I believe in Pete and Seth Talbot and the mission that they are on. They've got a heart for the hurting, and I'm so grateful to be part of that experience. Maybe from exercise, you're getting some aches and pains you don't like. Getting older, that can do it, getting older, which is why I'm so impressed with the way Relief Factor has helped so many.